Well, what I have found, as I have been talking to all of these different organizations, is that there's really one simple proposition that seems to make sense to everybody. And this is the same simple proposition I give to every one of these companies, and I want to share it with you today. And it is this, and it is very simple. Let's face it, particularly today, we do have a lot of problems. There are a lot of problems out there. There are a lot of things that we need to solve. And I can say this is my simple proposition. We can solve our problems with pictures. We can solve our problems with pictures. Now, I know that sounds grossly simple, but I also know from my own experience that I am completely confident that it is true because I have never seen it not work, which is a weird language construction, but the point I want to make is that I have never seen the application, the creation of a simple picture to help try to clarify a complex idea, if not outright solve that idea. I have never seen that not work, or at a minimum, not help. And that's really what I want to share with you today. But at the same time, I also recognize if I was in your seats and someone got up in front of me and said, hey, we can solve our problems with pictures, I would think this guy was a total flake. And I want to dissuade you of that because I want to show that this actually really truly does work. And so the way I want to do that is ask 3 questions, which if I was the person, if I was in your seat and I was saying, oh, this guy, what's he talking about? I'd like to think that I'd have the presence of mind to ask Dan, if I was sitting in your seat, Dan, that sounds great. We can solve problems with pictures. But I have 3 questions for you. That's three questions for you. Which problems are you talking about? Which pictures are you talking about? And which people are you talking about? Namely, who is going to do this? Because I'm sure there are some among us who might think we're not particularly visual people. I like those 3 questions. Which problems, which pictures, which people? In fact, those 3 questions are going to become the agenda for the next 2 hours that we're going to be spending together. And we will be spending 2 hours, although I can tell you now we'll have a break about halfway through, so just so you can be prepared for that. If there's anybody who cannot stay the entire time, I'm going to give you a little secret right now. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes super executive summary of answering those 3 questions right now in the next couple of minutes. Which problems are we talking about? The simple answer is all problems. Any problem that we can conceive of, any problem that we can articulate at all, we can articulate infinitely more clearly through the use of pictures. Okay, that's point number 1. Well, which pictures are we talking about? I mean, if these pictures are going to help us solve any conceivable problem, these pictures must be extraordinarily complex and sophisticated and take very sophisticated computer programs to create, right? And lots of artistic training and talent. Well, the answer, of course, is no. The answer is these pictures are exceedingly simple. And in fact, the reason why you all have whiteboards on your desks is now is the time to start pulling them out because we are going to be using them. I'd like everybody to go ahead for a moment as a warm-up drill. And here's the kind of pictures I'm talking about. Follow along with me if you'd like. If you can draw a square, and it doesn't matter how ugly it is, if you can draw a square, if you can draw a circle, if you can draw an arrow connecting them, you're almost all the way there, because the really tricky one is if you can draw a stick figure, you can draw every picture that we're going to be talking about. It is that simple. And I'm going to give you the neurobiology a little bit later in the day as to why this is the case. Well, now, if this is the case, if these pictures are so simple, we've already answered this 3rd question, haven't we? Who's going to do this? We're all going to do it. And there are many people, and we're actually going to do a little test later on to identify who within this room are the people who consider themselves good visual thinkers or maybe not such good visual thinkers. I know that there are a lot of people who are probably thinking, Dan, this sounds really great, but I'm not one of those visual people. I'm maybe more verbal, I'm more mathematic, what have you. I don't buy it. I set the bar really, really, really low. Everybody in here passed it already, you didn't even know. If you could walk through that door and find a place to sit down without falling down, you were visual enough to understand everything that we're going to talk about. As humans, we are fundamentally visual creatures, and to an extraordinarily greater extent than any other one of our sensory or mental processing models. In fact, well over half the neurons in our brain that are processing sensory information are processing vision. More than half are processing vision. which tells us a couple of interesting things about vision. Number one, it tells us that it must be pretty complicated, which it is. We are only now beginning to understand how vision actually functions, and it's fascinating, and I will share some of those insights with you later. But the other one is it tells us vision must be pretty darn important to us. If we have dedicated more than half of our brain to be able to process vision, vision must be pretty critical. The test of this, we're born visual. In fact, I was just reading a story the other day in New Scientist magazine. This just came out about a month ago, that said in the first 4 months of an infant's life, virtually all development of the brain is taking place in the centers that process vision and process movement. That is the way, seeing is the way that we make our way through the world and start to build models of how the world works so that we can understand how to solve the problems that are put in front of us.